How do I sell more via Instagram is a question that I see and hear all of the time. Now, I'll be honest and say that even as a digital marketing coach, it's sometimes a question that I shy away from because I do believe there is so much more to our online presence than just an Instagram account. However, I'll also be the first to admit that Instagram can be an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to growing our businesses online. I know that in my business and so many of the businesses that I work with, Instagram is a really fundamental part of their online presence and in what sells what they do and ultimately what grows their business. So if that sounds like you, I want to talk you through today 5 tips for you to sell more via Instagram. Sadly, these are not secrets or hacks that nobody else knows about. These are just things that I notice really help when it comes to using Instagram in an intentional way. So let's get into it, starting off with tip number 1, which is serve before you sell. Showing up online is really about bringing value to people. You cannot expect your Instagram account to be full of sales pitches and to grow an audience of people that actually want to engage. If you grow an Instagram account with service and value at the forefront, let me tell you, you're not only going to grow in a way more organic and fast way, but you're also going to grow in a way where then that end sale is way easier. We cannot expect people to be receptive to our sales pitches if we don't yet build a relationship with them and serve them first. Serving people really just means giving value, and value can mean anything. Value is giving information. Value is giving entertainment. Value is creating something relatable or inspiring. Value is going to look different to every single one of our businesses because it does need to link in with the product or service that we sell. But if we ensure that our content is driven by value and that we're serving before selling to people, let me tell you, the way that we grow and the way that we're going to sell is going to feel so much better. Don't just expect people to take a risk on your product or service. Prove to them beforehand that it's worth investing. Show your expertise. Show that you have experience that's relevant for people. Constantly build a relationship with your audience where they associate positive things with you. And if you do that, when you serve first, when you do it that way, the end sale is going to be met in such a better way. Let me just tell you that. Tip number 2 is to tell people what you do. Oh my gosh, does this feel like a stupid thing to be saying in a tips video? But also, oh my gosh, is it something that I see so many people needing to be reminded about? I understand why we need reminding about it though, because we assume people know our businesses like we do. We know our businesses inside out. We're probably bored to death of talking about our products and services. So we assume it's the same for our audience, but it's absolutely not. They need constant reminders of what we do, who it's for, how it works, and what the impact is. And your content needs to be constantly saying those things. We cannot just assume that people will go out of their way to understand what we do. We need to be putting it in front of them. The amount of people I follow where I really like them and I like their content, but I don't really know what their business is or what they sell is crazy. And we're missing such a small trick by just not being intentional about the way that we tell people what we do. Now, of course, we don't want our online presence or Instagram to be repetitive. We don't just want our content to be every single day, hey, this is what I do, this is who it's for, this is how it works, this is the impact. Nah, that's boring. Point number 1, serve before you sell. That's not serving, right? So we think of creative ways to say it. You think, okay, how can I creatively tell people what I do? If I'm a photographer, I take people behind the scenes on a shoot. If I'm a graphic designer, I show people the process from creating a mood board to landing on an end logo. If I'm a digital marketing coach, I talk to people about my story and how I landed on being a digital marketing coach to remind them, hey, I'm a digital marketing coach. You showcase your customers and your clients so people can see themselves in their shoes and think, hey, I'm kind of like them. Maybe this thing is for me. I'm not going to keep giving examples because honestly, I'd be here all day. But tip number 2 basically is just tell people what you do and think of the creative ways that you can do that. It's a constant work in progress for me to come up with more creative and more interesting ways to tell people about what I do. But it's so important to me to have a constant focus on that because I never want an audience who likes me, kind of likes what I'm about, but doesn't actually know the thing that I sell. So we tell people what we sell. Have we got that? Point number 2, tell people what you do. That rhymed. Poet, you didn't know it. Moving on to tip number 3, which is about first impressions. Now, this tip is to ensure that your bio and your highlights are working hard for you. What I mean by that is that we're utilizing the way that we build a first impression on Instagram. On a platform that is constantly asking for our attention in different places and basically designed just to suck us in to an Instagram stalking hole, we've got to be intentional about how we use the things on our profile to grab people's attention, stop them clicking, and make them want to stick around. Let's start with your bio, because again, this is something that I see people making mistakes with all the time, and it really is a simple one. Use your bio to introduce your business. Use it to introduce the key things that you want people to know. This is going to look different for every single one of your businesses, but really just ask yourself, what are the main kind of 2 or 3 things that I value someone knowing in order for them to be interested in what I do and somewhat familiar with how I do it and what I sell. If you are not using your bio as an introduction to those things, then you are absolutely missing a point, because that's often the first place people look to really try and understand what you're about and basically whether they should follow. And then the second thing to utilize is your highlights. Now, I think a lot of the time when we think about first impressions on Instagram, we think about the way that our grid looks. And sure, that is definitely important if that's something that your ideal client or customer values in an Instagram account that they follow. However, I think highlights can be really powerful and are often underused. We know that stories are a growing part of Instagram, and they're definitely the majority of what I know I consume and also of what I know my content is. So it makes sense to me to ensure that my highlights are used really strategically to give people, again, just that immediate taste of what I'm about. Do not just use your highlights as a dumping ground for all of your stories. Use them really intentionally to tell people key things. Have highlights for an introduction to you and your business. Have highlights which show your behind the scenes. Have highlights which are around the service and the value that you give via your stories. Organize them so there's not 200 highlights that I have to click through, but so that they're really clearly organized and labeled so that I know what I'm getting myself into, or before that point even, I'm interested to click and have a look. So tip number 3, know that first impressions count, use your bio intentionally, and use your highlights intentionally too. Also, just to add to that, just had a thought, your highlights almost act as a try before you buy. If you think of the buy as following you on Instagram, your highlights are similar to someone scrolling through your feed to decide whether they like your content and want to follow. If Instagram stories is where you think you show up best, hello, that's definitely true for me, it's important to use the highlights to show off some of your best stories so that people get a taste of them, hopefully enjoy them, and then want to follow. So don't just use it as an introduction to your business and what you're about, also use it as an introduction to your content itself. Anyway, that little caveat has been added. On to point number 4, which is use your website intentionally. I know, Alice, why are you chatting about websites? We're here to talk about Instagram. Well, the two are very linked. And let me tell you, if you're not being intentional about how your Instagram links with your website, you are making Instagram work too hard for you. I see it happen a lot. We want Instagram to do all of the work. When we think about the journey that someone goes on from being a stranger of what we do to buying what we do, we often want Instagram to do all of that work. And yes, Instagram sometimes can, but actually the end point of that buyer's journey, where often people are looking for very detailed info and the ability to take action, I'm just going to say isn't best done via Instagram. Instagram is amazing for cultivating community, nurturing them with great value, making them familiar with you, building that like, know, and trust factor, and then offering them a next step. So don't be afraid to let your Instagram account stay simple in the way that it does those things, and then just be really intentional with the way that you point people towards your website. For me, my website is the place where things become effective, and that's true for most of our businesses because it's where people buy, it's where they inquire, it's where they take action. So allow some of your more detailed info, like all of the FAQs about your upcoming program or all of the detailed info about your latest product, to sit on your website. If I put all of the info about my retreat onto Instagram, I would bore the 20% of my audience who aren't interested or aren't a fit for it. But by only sharing the stuff that really adds value and interests people and saving maybe the more boring but still very important content for my website, I'm allowing my Instagram to stay exciting and interesting and full of value, point number 1, but I'm also still allowing people to get that detailed info. I'm just allowing it to sit on my website instead of on my Instagram account. Of course, then we've got to be intentional about moving people from our Instagram to our website. And I often see the excuse of, I don't have a swipe up used here. But even if you just have the link in your bio, it's making sure that you're using something, say like Linktree or a page on your website, to put tons of different links via that one link. It's always using the language of link in bio. I know it's repetitive. I know it sounds cringe, but it's repetitive for a reason, because we need to say it. And really just always being clear to people that their next step from Instagram is your website. I promise you, when you let Instagram do what it does best and allow your website to work harder in offering next steps for people and more detailed info for people, everything becomes so much more effective. And I'm going to round this up with the fifth and final tip that you've likely heard before, but we all need a reminder of, which is to be yourself. I have seen a direct correlation between the more that I've allowed myself to just show up as me and the more that my Instagram account has grown and my business and income has grown as a result. The biggest thing, and let me just say the only thing that sets you and your business apart, is the fact that it's by you. So do not be afraid to let that shine through. There are, of course, the things about us that are really, really relevant to what we sell. You know, if you're a service-based business, your experience and your values and your approach, those are really important to communicate. If you're product-based, it's a very similar story. But there's also parts to being yourself which aren't directly linked to what we sell, but still can be really powerful. My most engaged piece of content was a time last year where I started a nosebleed on Instagram stories, and no word of a lie, I have never had so many story views and so many interactions since. Now, did people buy my coaching or my programs or my retreat because I had a nosebleed? No. But did that video and that piece of content make me stick out in their mind, really engage them, make them interested in me, and make them remember me? Absolutely. Whilst it hasn't directly sold anything, oh my gosh, has that piece of content helped me to sell? Because it's given people something to remember me by. When you are personal, you are memorable. So whether it's your personality, whether it's your quirks, whether it's your interests, don't be afraid to let them shine through, because I can bet those are the things that are really going to stand out to people. Those are the things that are really going to connect people to you. And of course, we need other content alongside that to sell what we do. I've already talked about that content, but the personal stuff is so important. I know that it's not always the most comfortable thing. Putting yourself out there can be scary, but I can promise you, when it comes to finding your people, it's like they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. And whilst I kind of hate that phrase, it's very true. The way that you show up, the more that you show up with personality, the more you're going to grow an audience who is really aligned with you and your business. We are not going to be for everyone. I fully appreciate some people in the industry probably don't like me, and that's completely fine. I would rather show up with personality and be myself and allow 50% to really love me and 50% to not really care, than for 100% to follow along but not really care either way. So fifth tip, be yourself. And I promise you, the more you do it, the easier it gets. 3 years ago, I couldn't think of anything worse than showing a nosebleed on Instagram stories. Now, I practically beg myself to have another nosebleed because, quite frankly, I could do with the engagement. But anyway, there we have it. 5 tips for selling more via Instagram. I'd love to know what you think. Come and connect with me over on Instagram. Wow, I've said Instagram a lot in this video. At Alice_Benham. If you've got any questions, if you've got any thoughts, I love a DM, and particularly love a voice note DM. So just so you know, they're my fave. But anyway, do let me know if there's anything you'd like to see from future videos. I am stepping up my frequency, is that the word? Consistency? One of those 2 words of video. So hopefully you're going to see more of me here. I mean, that's hopefully if you're in that 50% that likes me. If you're in the 50% that doesn't, how have you made it through this far, unless you're just hate watching this, which, to be fair, is a thing. Anyway, this has taken a turn. I will be back in another video soon. Enjoy. Why do I always end videos doing this? So annoying. All right. Bye.